everyone, it's your Twin Tiers real estate guy Sean with Howard Hanna Realty Pioneers, and you are tuning in to episode 7 of Community Connect. So today I'm here with Ryan Werthner of M&T Bank, and I'm going to ask him some questions that frequently happen throughout the real estate transaction about the mortgage process that I hear all the time. So Ryan, why don't we tell our audience here, who you are and how long you've been doing mortgages in general.
Thanks, Sean, for having me on. I've been with M&T for about almost 2 years now, but been doing mortgages since the late 90s.
The late 90s?
Late 90s,
wow.
Yeah. It's quite a bit different now than it was then, but...
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Well, cool.
To say the least.
So, which leads me to the next question I hear a lot, Ryan, is that, there's a lot of acronyms out there that are for loans. You got your FHA, your USDA, VA. Yeah. I mean, can you expand a little more on, what they mean? We could probably talk about this for hours, or you could at least.
Yeah.
But just, kind of expand a little more on each one and, go into them a little bit.
Well, yeah, each one of those different loan programs have a host of different rules associated with them. But in very general terms, you have conventional loans and then you have the alphabet soup of other loans. So a conventional loan is defined as any loan that is offered that does not require governmental insurance.
Great way to explain it, yeah.
What most people typically mean by conventional is loans that are available to be sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Those are the two biggest buyers of mortgages on the secondary market.
Secondary mortgage market. Okay.
And they set, by and large, the mortgage guidelines that many lenders follow.
Okay.
In whole or in part. So then you have loan programs like FHA, VA, USDA. Those are loans that are insured in some way, shape, or form, or otherwise guaranteed in some way, shape, or form by one part or another of the government. For example, FHA is a loan program that's administered through the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Okay.
VA is for veterans, and that's administered through the Veterans Administration. USDA is administered through the Department of Agriculture.
Right.
What they have to do with house buying, I'm not sure. But,
I've always wondered that myself.
Yeah, but so it's just a question of who's doing the insuring, and since they're doing the insuring, they're setting their individual guidelines that a lender would have to follow in order to get that insurance or that guarantee.
That's a pretty good way to explain it. I'm actually learning some things as we go on here too. So which leads me into my next question, talking about these, the FHA, USDA, and VA. On the home selling side of it, when one of our clients accepts an offer that's USDA or VA, there comes, or FHA in this case, there's an FHA appraisal that happens, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, by and large, yes.
By and large, okay. So, and a lot of the things they come back and they're looking for particular things. Is there anything in general that you typically see come up on these appraisals that are, subject to cure, or, the seller has to get these things done before moving on to the next step in the mortgage process that you see often?
FHA administers their minimum housing requirements through the appraiser. Okay. The appraiser is going to follow much of the standard protocol of appraising a property, with the exception of on an FHA or USDA loan, it's got to be an appraiser that is approved by FHA. The appraiser then has to check various aspects of the house for health and safety concerns. So the primary concern for FHA via the appraisal is looking for those health and safety concerns. For example, if you have an outlet that doesn't have a faceplate on it, like that light switch over there, for example, it was missing that faceplate. That would have to be cured.
Right. Or like the GFCI outlets with the reset buttons?
Wherever there's water, in a kitchen, bathroom, laundry room. So that's a health and safety concern. Chipping paint, FHA is not a fan of it. So that has to be scraped, and then 2 coats have to be reapplied over top of it.
And another one I'm trying to think, because I've seen them on my appraisals a lot when they come back with my clients, is handrails.
Yes, handrails are a big deal.
Anywhere where there's more than 3 steps, is it, or is it's kind of like one of those?
It varies a bit on what municipality you're in, but generally, if you're talking about at least an 18-inch drop, you should have a handrail of some sort, and in some places it might be lower than that, depending on what the code is.
I'm trying to think of a couple other ones that come up.
Handrails are a big one. Paint,
paint.
Almost always paint.
The roof life has to be within, or
Generally, they're looking. Almost all loan programs are looking for at least 2 years of economic life remaining
on the roof. Okay.
The theory being, obviously, somebody's putting up a lot of money to move into a house, and they have a major roof repair in the first 12 months of owning it.
Right.
That's sometimes doesn't work out well.
Right. Yep. That's true. And then the broken windows, if there's any broken windows, sometimes they note that as well.
Yeah, certainly, because that could fall under health and safety concerns. Somebody could easily be cut.
Right.
And, notwithstanding the heat loss in the winter. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's just a couple things that I see come up on the appraisals that come back to me for my clients. Hope that helps you guys out a little bit, that we expanded on it, so you can get prepared for that, in the future. If you do accept a USDA, FHA, VA offer, just be prepared that these are some things that the appraiser is going to be looking for, so you might be able to get ahead of the game a little bit. So Ryan, which leads to me one of my final questions is, I hear this a lot, is how much money would I need to buy a house? Now I know that's probably an answer you could go on, because there's just all different kinds of loan programs, but in general, maybe even a rough estimate, how much money would I need to buy a house?
Well, that really varies quite a bit, and I hate to be vague about it, but when I referred to earlier about structuring the transaction, looking for that seller assist or not, that's part and parcel with figuring out how much cash is going to be needed for closing.
Right.
So the way I try to explain it to customers is, when you're buying a house, you really need 3 piles of cash.
Okay.
You need money for a down payment,
okay,
if any. Like USDA's, there's no down payment.
0%
FHA's 3.5. Conventional could be as little as 3% down. VA 0.
Right.
Then you have closing costs, and then you have prepaid expenses. So the next logical question would be, what's the difference between a closing cost and a prepaid expense? Closing costs are those costs that you incur one time for closing a transaction, and prepaids are your property tax and insurance. They're reoccurring by nature. But you're going to need tax money at closing. The seller's going to want some of the taxes they've paid in advance back. You're going to set up escrow if you're doing an escrow account. You're going to need to buy the first year of insurance.
Attorney fees.
Attorney fees, title fees, appraisal fees, lender fees.
It adds up.
Recording fees. That adds up in a hurry. Oftentimes, the down payment and prepaid, or the closing costs and prepaids, are more than the down payment.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, if, for example, if we look at doing a USDA loan, we know we can get away with no down payment, so that bucket's gone. USDA will allow the seller to contribute up to 6% of the price back to help cover closing costs and prepaid expenses for the buyer.
So the buyer could actually, just using easy terms, if you're buying a $100,000 house and they allow up to 6% of seller,
or $6,000 in that case,
or $6,000. So you could put the offer in for $106,000, and then the seller would technically clear $100,000. But the other $6,000 that's in the 106 comes back to the buyer to help pay for all these costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you're buying it for 106 and the seller's giving you back 6,000, the seller gets 100, and you get 6,000 towards those other 2 buckets.
Towards all your 2 buckets, yeah.
Yeah.
Good way.
So the part and parcel of cash to close is the tax figures. Generally, you're going to need, if you're setting up escrow, 9, 10, 11 months, someplace in there, depending on when those bills are due. In taxes. So depending on where you're buying, that can make a huge difference cost-wise. New York taxes tend to be more expensive than PA.
Right.
So if you're buying in New York, you're probably going to need a little bit more money than if you're buying south of the border.
Okay. So it seems like there's a lot of value right there, and I hope this is the whole reason I do this Community Connect, guys, to make sure that I'm bringing the most value to you as I can. And I think that a lot of what Ryan was saying now, it will help you get ahead of the game, help you understand. I hope it helps you understand the process a little better. Especially me, I'm learning new things as I'm sitting here as well. So, there's some very valuable information there. Hey, Ryan, thanks again for your time. And
no problem.
If anybody has any questions, stop by one of the M&T branches and see them.